Rand Paul calls Jasmine Crockett arrogant on live TV. Seconds later, she shuts Paul down with one sentence. A single word can flip a live interview. Projection. Today, we unpack how a tense Rand Paul-Jasmine Crockett exchange escalated over power, framing, and policy, and how one concise sentence reversed the momentum on live TV, reshaping the narrative in seconds. Quick challenge. What's the most effective 5 to 10 word rebuttal line in modern politics, and why does it work across audiences? Share a candidate phrase before hearing Crockett's response and see if it matches the principle behind her pivot. What actually happened here? On the surface, it looked like a classic cable news clash. Senator Rand Paul calls Representative Jasmine Crockett arrogant, and the segment tilts toward personality and heat. But the real action was a framing fight. Who sets the terms, who owns the timing, and who decides what counts as serious? Paul tried to predefine Crockett's tone so any assertiveness read as confirmation. Crockett refused the bait, slowed the tempo, and delivered a single sentence that shifted the stakes from character to consequences. That changed the audience's question from, "Is she arrogant?" to, "Whose argument protects the public?" Live TV rewards compression. One clean line beats 5 clever paragraphs. Crockett's pivot worked because it tied to shared values, process, fairness, cost, and steered the conversation back to policy ground where voters actually feel outcomes. In that moment, she moved from defending herself to defending standards, oversight integrity, constitutional lanes, and household impact. This wasn't about a zinger. It was about jurisdiction over the narrative. By not repeating the label, she denied oxygen to the frame and made substance the headline. Producers clip clarity, voters remember clarity, colleagues reward control. Actionable takeaway, we. And someone tries to define you with an adjective, don't wrestle the word. Rename the stakes, law, cost, fairness, and deliver one quotable sentence that forces evidence back onto the table. Then stop talking, let the silence do the work. Why the arrogant label? It's not just an insult, it's a pre-framing device that rigs the next 30 seconds. Call someone arrogant, and every assertive syllable they speak reads like proof, not argument. It narrows the audience's lens from substance to attitude, turning policy into posture. The move is strategic. Define the person first, and you control how their evidence lands. That's why the smartest reply doesn't touch the word, it starves it. Here's the surprising part. Labels work because they're cheap, sticky, and binary. Nuance costs time. Labels cash out instantly. The counter is equally fast. Reframe to shared stakes. Process, cost, fairness. One crisp sentence that moves from me versus you to rules versus risk. It flips judgment from character to consequences. That's the pivot. There's also a trap in defending tone. The more airtime spent proving humility, the less oxygen left for oversight, prices, or constitutional lanes. The clock is the real opponent. So redirect it. Name the tactic once, briefly, then anchor to a public interest. Labeling doesn't lower prices or follow the law. Actionable takeaway. Don't repeat the label. Replace the premise. Use a 10-word pivot that ties to a value and a voter outcome. Example. Feelings aside. Your policy hikes costs and sidesteps Congress. 2 beats, 1 shift. Then stop. Let silence showcase control. Picture the studio. Bright lights, split screen, clock ticking. Paul drops arrogant like a flare, hoping the smoke becomes the story. The host leans in. Crosstalk rises. Then Crockett does something counterintuitive. She pauses. Breath. Tempo shifts. And with the stillness of a gavel, she lay. India's one line. Insults don't cut prices or follow the Constitution. The room recalibrates. It's no longer about her temperament. It's about outcomes and rules. Producers hear a chyron. Viewers hear priorities. That's the anatomy of a one-sentence shutdown. Compress the stakes, anchor to shared values, and move the lens from personality to consequence. A good line attacks the premise, not the person. It names the public interest, law, cost, fairness, and makes the opponent's tactic look small by comparison. The brilliance isn't barbed wit, it's moral altitude plus measurable impact. Silence matters too. After the sentence, she doesn't fill the space. The pause forces the host to choose. Chase the insult or follow the substance. Most follow substance. The clip writes itself. Build your own version with a simple spine. This isn't about me, it's about value, and your plan raises cost risk for group. 10 seconds max. If it can't fit under a caption, it won't travel. If it centers voters' interests, it will. Actionable takeaway. Prescript 3 one-liners tied to law, price, and fairness. Deliver them at a lower tempo than the attack. End clean, and let the silence underline the pivot. Precision wins. Silence seals. I learned this the hard way, long before the bright lights. In my first big oversight-style hearing as a junior attorney, I walked in with binders, citations, and adrenaline, and walked out realizing I'd prepared for questions, not chaos. A senior counsel tried to rattle me with a smirk and a label, and my pulse did the rest. My mentor pulled me aside after. They're auditioning your composure, not your resume. That line rewired me. Oversight isn't just facts, it's frame control under pressure. Fast forward to today's spotlight stakes. If you're angling for a bigger oversight role, every live exchange becomes a screen test. Colleagues watch for spine, voters watch fee, or clarity, and producers watch for clips. The pressure isn't theoretical. It's a metronome in your ear counting down the next interruption. The fix wasn't more data. It was pacing, a single sentence that recenters law, cost, and fairness, and the discipline to stop talking once it lands. Short line, long shadow. Here's the quiet trick that saved me. Prescript 3 pivots before any high-heat appearance. 1 for process, 1 for pocketbook, 1 for fairness. Under fire, I don't search, I select. That's how calm survives crosstalk. And when ambition meets scrutiny, calm is currency. Actionable takeaway. Treat each heated moment like a promotion interview held in public. Enter with 1 value, 1 metric, and 1 closing line that proves stewardship under stress. Deliver at half speed, then let silence mark control. Ambition needs cadence. Don't fight the word, flip the frame. When someone tosses a label, arrogant, weak, extreme, they're inviting you to argue about vocabulary while the clock drains. The cure isn't a better adjective, it's a bigger arena. Elevate the conversation to the rules that govern outcomes. Law, cost, fairness. That's where audiences live. The moment you debate the word, you turn your back to the public and your face to the heckler. Face the public. Start with a principle, not a protest. 1 sentence. Labels don't lower prices or follow the law. That line relocates the debate from feelings to facts, from character to consequences. Then you choose the terrain, pocketbook, process, or protection, and deliver a single, testable claim. Now you're measuring, not emoting. Measurement persuades. Name the tactic once, briefly, to inoculate. Character framing avoids your record. Then pivot. Here's what matters. Your plan raises costs and skirts Congress. 2 beats, clean contrast, no repetition of the bait. The audience hears a guardrail, not a grievance. That's authority without attitude. Timing seals it. Drop the line at a lower tempo than the attack. End decisively. The pause that follows is strategic. Let the moderator chase substance. Don't clutter the signal with extras. Clarity travels. Clarity wins. Tariffs carry a double cost, at the checkout and at the ballot box. Economically, they function as taxes that businesses pass to consumers, pushing prices higher on everyday goods while inviting retaliation that hits exporters in farm and manufacturing states. Politically, those higher costs show up as voter frustration, eroding support in swing districts and amplifying intra-party rifts, especially when household budgets feel squeezed. That's why critics warn, tariff math becomes election math, fast. There's also a constitutional wrinkle that magnifies politics. When sweeping tariffs come via emergency powers or executive fiat, the fight shifts from economics to separation of powers. Who sets taxes in America? Congress or the president? Framing tariffs as both a pocketbook burden and a constitutional overreach broadens the coalition against them, pulling in civil libertarians, budget hawks, exporters, and consumer advocates. 2 fronts, 1 backlash. History adds weight to the warning. Protectionist surges like Smoot-Hawley triggered global retaliation, steep trade declines, and deepened economic pain. Outcomes voters punished at the polls as costs climbed and confidence fell. Modern markets still react similarly, souring the political weather when tariffs expand unpredictably. The through line is simple. Higher prices and legal overreach make tough messages to sell, especially in tight races. Actionable takeaway. Pair a kitchen table fact with a civics guardrail in one line. Tariffs raise prices and bypass Congress. Families and the Constitution pay. Expert quote, energy, emergency rule, and Congress's role. Emergency rule isn't how a republic governs. Tariffs are taxes, and the Constitution puts taxing power in Congress, not the president, Rand Paul has argued, warning that unilateral tariff decrees invert separation of powers. He frames the issue simply: emergency powers are for invasions and wars, not trade deficits, and stretching them to tax the American people by executive order erodes the very guardrails the founders designed. The legal backbone is clear. Article 1 vests tariff and taxing authority in Congress, even if statutes have delegated narrow, time-bound discretion to the executive. Courts are starting to push back too. A federal trade court recently blocked blanket tariffs as exceeding presidential authority. Here's the practical lesson for live debate. Elevate from personalities to process. One line that lands: no taxation without representation applies to tariffs. Congress first. It synthesizes the civics, the constraint, and the consumer impact in under 10 seconds. Follow with a clarifier that emergency statutes like IEEPA have never been about taxing Americans at the border. Using them that way rewrites the Constitution by proclamation. Then stop. Let the moderator chase the substance. Who taxes, under what law, and with what limits? Actionable takeaway. Pair an expert anchor with a rule of law pivot. Tariffs are taxes. Taxes start in Congress. Emergency rule isn't a shortcut. That's principled and portable. Vivid example. The shutdown context. Picture a Friday night countdown with the budget clock bleeding red. The chyron screams, hours to shut down, phones buzz on Capitol Hill, and staffers sprint between offices with draft writers like hot coal. In that pressure cooker, every on-air sentence becomes a signal to markets, agencies, and voters about who's serious and who's posturing. Now imagine a split-screen debate where one side hurls a label to bait a fight and the other side answers with a "so-cho." Intent's built for governance, not grievance. Blame won't fund paychecks. Pass a clean bill that follows the law. The atmosphere shifts. It's no longer about attitude. It's about stewardship. Producers hear accountability. Agencies hear direction. Viewers hear priorities. Shutdown windows magnify consequences. A sloppy line can trigger headlines, spook contractors, and harden negotiating positions. A precise line can unlock a path, commit to guardrails, name the cost of delay, and specify the next legal step. That's why the best shutdown soundbites do three things quickly: center workers and services, cite the process that restores funding, and signal willingness to negotiate within the rules. 10 seconds, real stakes. Here's the playbook. Drop one sentence that ties duty to deliverables. Keep TSA paid. Vote on the continuing resolution tonight. Then stop. Let the moderator chase substance, not squabbles. In a shutdown context, clarity isn't just rhetoric, it's operational guidance. Actionable takeaway. Prescript one shutdown line for duty, one for legality, one for timeline. Deliver at half speed, end clean, and let the silence force focus. Clarity leads. Practical, actionable takeaway. The pivot template. Here's the spine. This isn't about me. It's about value. Your plan raises cost risk for group, and we won't accept it. It's short, portable, and forces the conversation onto measurable ground. Swap 3 slots, value, cost, risk, group, without changing cadence. Keep it under 12 seconds. If it can fit a caption, it can frame a debate. Add a tactic tag if needed, brief and done. Character framing dodges your record. Here's what matters. Pivot line. Then stop. Silence underscores control. Drill the delivery. Lower tempo than the attack. Flat effect. Clean stop. Practice under interruption. Start mid-sentence, finish anyway. Record and time each to 8 to 12 seconds. If it rambles, cut adjectives. Verbs carry w. 8. Why does a 9-word line outperform a 90-second monologue on live TV? Because television is a compression chamber, the audience is multitasking, producers are hunting for a chyron, and the algorithm favors clips that fit neatly between notifications. Attention is scarce. Recall is even scarcer. In that environment, the brilliance that meanders becomes invisible. Brevity becomes a signal. Here's the physics. Working memory holds a tiny payload, so complex chains collapse under crosstalk and time pressure. A concise line survives interruption, travels cleanly in captions, and can be quoted without distortion. It has edges. It's also easier to verify, which signals confidence and control. Long answers invite edits. Short answers resist them. Brevity isn't dumbing down. It's distilling. The best short lines compress a principle and a consequence. Process plus pocketbook, fairness plus cost, rights plus results. That dual beat lands across coalitions because it answers two questions at once. Is it legitimate? And does it help me? That's why producers clip it and audiences repeat it. It fits the medium. Delivery seals the deal. A slower tempo than the attack, a clean stop, and no filler. The pause after a tight line forces the moderator to follow substance or look evasive. Silence is part of the sentence. Actionable takeaway. Write one sentence that a producer could use as a chyron and a voter could repeat to a friend. If it doesn't fit in one breath and one caption, cut until it does. Short wins. Here's the counterintuitive truth. The fastest way to lose a live exchange is to argue about the insult. Dignifying the jab locks you inside the attacker's frame. Now you're debating temperament while the clock bleeds and the audience forgets the stakes. Redirection isn't evasion, it's elevation. Move from feelings to facts, from personality to public interest, from noise to rules. Shift the lens. Do it in 2 beats. Beat 1. Name the tactic once, briefly. Character framing dodges your record. Beat 2. Impose the stakes. Here's what matters. Your plan raises prices and skirts Congress. That move flips the burden back to evidence and law, where accountability lives. It also signals composure. Composure persuades. Why it works. Audiences prioritize outcomes and legitimacy over attitude theater. When you redirect to pocketbook impact, constitutional lanes, or fairness, you're speaking about their hierarchy of needs, not your pride. Producers, too, prefer clean substances. They clip what's clear and portable. Give them a line they can caption. Delivery is half the tactic. Lower your tempo, keep your affect flat, and finish clean. Do not repeat the label. Do not add qualifiers. Let silence force the moderator toward your frame. The pause is part of the redirect. The first time I realized media moments double as promotion interviews was in a cramped radio studio, not a grand hearing room. A veteran host opened with a smile, then pressed a hot button label and cut my mic mid-answer to force a stumble. I felt the heat rise, reached for a paragraph, and lost the room. Afterward, a producer pulled me aside. "You were right on policy. You lost pace." That stung. But it was the lesson. In politics, live segments are auditions under strobe lights. Donors grade poise, colleagues grade control, voters grade clarity. Composure is currency. So I built a ritual. Before every high heat hit, 3 cards: process, pocketbook, fairness, 1 sentence each. I drilled them under noise. Someone interrupting, someone smirking, someone baiting. The goal wasn't clever, it was clean. On the next show, the label came again. I slowed, dropped 1 line: "Insults don't set taxes, Congress does," and stopped. The host leaned in, then followed my frame into law and cost. Clip secured, momentum fly. Pidda. Here's the quiet truth about auditions by fire. Everyone is watching for restraint more than rage. Restraint signals you can chair a hearing, steer a negotiation, and land a plane in turbulence. That's leadership on screen. Actionable takeaway. Treat every hostile segment like a committee gavel test. Preload 3 10-second pivots: law, price, fairness. Deliver at half speed, and end clean. If they drag you back to the label, repeat the pivot, not the word. Calm is the credential. Clipcraft is clout. Here's the twist. Trade debates aren't only about prices. They're about trust in the rules, too. When tariffs rise, households feel it at checkout, but they also question whether leaders are following constitutional lanes or stretching emergency powers to tax by decree, a double hit to wallets and confidence. That's why tariff shocks can trigger more than inflation headlines. They can erode legitimacy, spook markets, and harden political divides in one stroke. 2 fronts, 1 fallout. Trust is the quiet currency of open markets. When policy feels rules-based, consumers tolerate short-term pain. When it looks improvised or unilateral, they pull back, and businesses retrench, shrinking choice and growth. Courts weighing in on overreach don't just settle law, They reset belief that taxation starts in Congress and that guardrails still matter, which stabilizes expectations. The process restores confidence. Confidence restores spending. The practical message for Live Debate is simple. Pair a kitchen table fact with a civics guardrail. Tariffs raise prices and bypass Congress. Families and the Constitution pay. It connects outcomes people feel to rules they value, broadening persuasion across parties and professions. Keep it under 12 seconds. Let the silence do the rest. Actionable takeaway. Use a dual beat pivot that lands both dimensions. Wallet and rule of law both hit here. Then force specifics. Which statute authorizes the tariff and what's the household cost in dollars this quarter? Evidence plus legality wins attention and trust. Thought-provoking advice. Name the game, then play yours. If you don't name the tactic, you're trapped inside it. When someone lobs a label or a loaded question, the first move isn't outrage, it's diagnosis. One clean line, that's character framing to dodge your record. You've named the game. Now pivot to yours. Here's what matters. Your plan raises prices and skirts Congress. 2 beats, new terrain. You just moved from performance to proof. Why this works. Transparency disarms. Calling the tactic in plain language tells the audience you see the move and won't play the part assigned. Then you set stakes tied to shared values, law, cost, fairness, and force evidence into the spotlight. It's not a quip, it's a reroute with receipts. Producers can caption it, voters can repeat it, opponents must answer it. Keep the rhythm disciplined. 1 sentence naming the game, 1 sentence imposing the stakes. Stop. Don't explain the insult. Don't list 5 grievances. The pause after the pivot pressures the moderator to follow substance or look complicit in the dodge. Silence is leverage. It's 8:42 p.m. on a Friday and the Chiron reads hours to shut down as agencies draft contingency memos and markets watch the crawl for clues. In this pressure bubble, a single sentence can telegraph competence or chaos because producers amplify what's short, sharp, and carryable across platforms shaped by algorithmic curation. A sloppy line becomes a headline. A clean line becomes a compass for staff, stakeholders, and the public. Signal cuts through the noise when it names duty, process, and next legal step. In a world of peak intent and clipped attention, the most quotable sentence often writes the next day's narrative. Now picture the split screen. A jab lands, grandstanding, and the temptation is to spar, but the winning move is a steward's line. Blame won't fund paychecks. Pass the lawful bridge tonight. That sentence does 3 jobs in 10 words. Centers workers, invokes rule of law, and sets an actionable timeline that editors can caption without distortion. The pause afterward forces the moderator to pursue substance or appear complicit in deflection. Silence, used well, is part of the message in platform-driven news cycles. In shutdown optics, clarity isn't just rhetoric, it's operational guidance delivered in broadcast-ready form. Actionable takeaway. Prescript 3 shutdown soundbites. Duty, legality, timeline. Each under 12 seconds, each Chiron ready, and drill delivery at half speed with a hard stop so the clip travels intact through algorithmic feeds and editorial trims. Trade correlates with wealth. It's a deceptively simple line that translates a century of economics into 1 sentence. Open markets expand choice, competition lowers prices, and specialization boosts productivity. Households feel it as fuller carts and fatter paychecks. The core logic is compounding. When nations trade, they swap relative advantages, scale innovations faster, and spread fixed costs over larger markets. That unlocks investment, wages, and consumer surplus. It's not ideology, it's math multiplied by access. But the quote carries a second message. Rules make trade trustworthy. Predictable lanes, clear statutes, stable tariffs, and transparent dispute mechanisms turn cross-border commerce into a long-term bet rather than a political coin toss. When rules wobble, costs rise, inventories tighten, and small businesses lose the margins that make hiring possible. Order is an opportunity. The line also clarifies debates in 10 seconds. You can be pro-worker and pro-trade if you back guardrails, enforce labor and environmental standards, invest in worker upskilling, and provide targeted adjustment aid where shocks hit hardest. Smart openness beats brittle protectionism. Resilience isn't retreat. It's diversification plus domestic capacity where it matters. Semis, energy, health for shock absorption without sealing the doors. Balance wins. Turn the quote into a pivot that lands on kitchen table ground. Trade correlates with wealth. More jobs, lower prices, faster innovation. Then add the civics guardrail. But rules must be real. Fair labor, clean air, secure supply. 2 beats, 1 principle. Actionable takeaway. Use the line as a North Star, then specify the rule set, enforcement, skills, and resilience. So prosperity is both bigger and fairer. Wealth with rules. There's a quiet renegotiation happening inside institutions. Clip-native, policy-fluent younger leaders are gaining leverage against seniority systems that once guaranteed influence by tenure alone. The driver isn't just demographics, it's speed, message velocity, data fluency, and the ability to land a 10-second line that sets an agenda built for algorithmic news cycles. In a world where narratives harden overnight, precision beats pedigree. That's a shift. Seniority still matters. Relationships, rules mastery, and procedural muscle don't evaporate. But its monopoly on authority is cracking as parties, committees, and media ecosystems reward leaders who can translate complex policy into portable sentences that mobilize coalitions. Younger figures who pair clipcraft with competence, draft-ready bills, coalition maps, and credible oversight chops can jump lanes, chair crucial moments, and shape negotiations earlier than tradition would allow. Merit plus media equals momentum. The tension is productive, when it's channeled. Senior members hold institutional memory and floor tactics. Rising leaders bring digital organizing, rapid research, and cross-platform persuasion. Marry both, and caucuses gain durability and reach. Fight it, and factions calcify while attention drifts elsewhere. The stakes are practical: budgets, oversight calendars, and public trust. Actionable takeaway: build a 2-track ascent. For younger leaders, pair a 3-line media spine: law, cost, fairness, with committee-grade substance, amendment text, stakeholder math, whip counts. For seniors, formalize mentorship swaps, procedural coaching for digital strategy. Then codify a clip-to-clause workflow. Every viral line maps to a bill section, oversight question, or funding lever. Clipcraft with clauses wins. The next round won't be quieter. It'll be sharper. Expect more split-screen moments where personality labels collide with policy pivots on 3 fronts: tariffs, oversight, and emergency powers. Why? Because Congress is reasserting its lanes, courts are scrutinizing executive shortcuts, and households are feeling price pressure in real time. In that mix, the cleanest 10-second line will set the day's narrative. Compression is destiny. Here's what to watch: tariff proposals wrapped in security language, oversight hearings calibrated for clips, and governors or agencies testing edge case authorities. Each scenario rewards the same skill: 1 sentence that pairs a kitchen table fact with a civics guardrail. Wallet plus rule of law. 2 beats, broad reach. The figures who master it will outpace seniority with clipcraft and convert airtime into agenda items. Prepare for counterpivots too. Accusations of evasiveness when you refuse the insult orbit. Don't flinch. Name the tactic once, impose the stakes, and end clean. Repeat your pivot, not their label. Consistency becomes credibility. Portability as power. Lines that travel across platforms and coalitions will decide who frames trade, who chairs oversight moments, and who sets constraints on emergency tools. Write for replay. Lead with rules and results. Actionable takeaway: script 9 pivots. Law, price, fairness, x 3 issues. Drill delivery at half speed, and deploy 1 clean line per exchange. The next round rewards discipline. In a media ecosystem that rewards compression, a single sentence can carry an entire argument if it pivots from personality to public interest and from accusation to architecture. The Crockett-Paul dynamic shows how fast framing can flip when someone refuses the bait, names the stakes, and ties the result to rules and wallets. Next episode, the anatomy of a 9-word line that neutralizes a false premise without sounding evasive, tested against real hearing transcripts and live interviews.